Hey, listeners. Hope everyone's doing well out there. We're Not So Giant Women.
Hello.
Daria and Ivy with our Steven Universe podcast. And today we're hitting a nice round number, 30.
The big 3-0.
Yes, big 3-0. Boy, our podcast is getting old. Not as old as us.
That'll be another milestone when the episode number lapses our ages.
Oh, goodness. So, Island Adventure, along with any predictions, would you guess this is a literal or some kind of figurative island?
I'm going for literal this time.
I think you've seen this show.
An island locale would fit with the various stop-off points we've had so far. I won't entirely rule out that I'm about to meet a character called Island, though, knowing this show.
Let's see what it's about. Anything else? Any other predictions before we jump in?
No, other than adventure means what it sounds like.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they only give me so much to work with.
That's right.
We are the crystal gems. We'll always save the day. And if you think we should do this again sometime.
Sadie and Lars. That I did not anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
We open with our heroes having just finished a job, or as we'll soon learn, failed to finish a job on a beautiful island somewhere and warping back home. Stephen wants to be the one to trigger the warp pad and declares himself the warp master when he does so successfully. He didn't declare himself the warp master when he was going back and forth before, but maybe he was just too irritated with Greg at that point. Or maybe you have to do it from 2 places to earn the warp master title. However, the next mission for the gems involves him going underwater, which means Stephen can't come because he does still need air to breathe. He, however, is content to go and tell all his friends that he is the warp master. All his friends starts with the donut duo. He runs to Big Donut and tells them this. They're not terribly impressed. Lars and Sadie just get to bickering. Stephen realizes there must be something up with their relationship, astute as he is, and hits on the idea of taking them to the beautiful island that they just left to sort out their feelings for each other or relax or something, and to take him with them because Stephen has no idea of personal space, either emotionally or physically. Back to the island, the 3 of them warp in on the pad. Stephen gushes about what a beautiful place it is. Sadie is impressed. Lars wants to go back home and his mobile phone gets no service. However, no sooner do they try to go back to the warp pad as it is gone. It is not there. There is only a clearing and a pile of leaves. And they're like, oh no, we're stuck here. And Stephen is not too worried because he believes the crystal gems will come and find him. And besides, they're not worse places to be stuck. At first, Lars is just refusing to have anything to do with Stephen or Sadie. He is just stomping back and forth trying to get phone reception. Even when they find rocks look like pillows, he moves his rock pillow away from them. They talk about Lars' emotional state and he can still hear them because really he's only a few meters away. Sadie and Stephen try to catch some fish because they have to eat to live. This doesn't go well. Well, Stephen thinks his bait, like all the creatures on the island, is just too adorable to eat because there's a little smiling face on it. Sadie managed to skewer a bunch of fishes with her stick when she gets irritated at Lars for being painful and not helping. As Stephen says, this means they are going to live. Lars is elected cook because he hasn't done anything else useful so far. They make a fire and discover that Lars is quite a good cook when it comes to fire and strangely faced fishes. Stephen breaks into song. We get a bit of a montage about what a nice place this is to be, as long as you can be wherever and whoever you are. We see everyone getting on, and they do get more ragged. Sadie, amongst other things, acquires quite the mark on her face from some kind of adventuring or fish killing. Sadie and Lars seem to be growing closer. They actually manage to sleep and spoon in the hut they build. Stephen tries to spoon also, but Lars pushes him away, and for once I can't entirely blame him. Lars becomes distraught that they'll never get rescued. He still has no phone reception. The crystal gems still haven't come for them. Given how many days and nights we see pass in the little montage, one wonders what they're up to. They haven't noticed Stephen is around. I don't know if warp pads are like smartphones. They can't tell where someone last went to or something. But they haven't shown up. Lars and Sadie almost kiss as he makes a confession about his feelings and being lonely even when there are people around and how homesick he feels. And just when they're kissing, Stephen interrupted his ukulele again because he's been sitting there watching them the whole time because he has no idea of privacy. After a bit more back and forth and emotional trouble, their hut is stomped into nothing, apparently by nothing, because we've discovered the gem creature they failed to find last time. They failed to find it because it's invisible. This prompts bubble forming and running away, and Sadie says, oh, we should go this way, leads them back to the original clearing where the warp pad was. And in fact, it's where the warp pad is because she's the one who covered it in big leaves in the first place because she wanted to be stuck here with Lars and work on her relationship with him. Lars is pretty angry at this, shifting that it is no longer Stephen's fault that they all got stuck here, although he probably blames him too because he's Lars. But it's in fact Sadie's fault because she covered up their one means of leaving and has stuck them there for probably a good week or 3, again, judging by that montage. Stephen says, can we be angry on the warp pad instead of at each other over there? However, the rampage of the monster pushes Lars into a mud pit. They need to rescue him as he's attacked by the large invisible monster, becoming more visible with mud and rain. Sadie tries to beat it up, only goes so well until Stephen throws down her stick and tells her to use her fish murdering skills, which she does, and managed to incapacitate the monster, driving a nice bit of animation. She drives the stick through its otherwise non-existent body. It poofs down to its singular gem, which Stephen then bubbles. Lars begrudgingly or sadly thanks Sadie for saving him, and as they warp out, Stephen says they should do this again sometime. And that's the continuing saga of Lars and Sadie in Island Adventure.
Indeed.
We kind of shift things a bit this week because it really is entirely Sadie's fault that they're stuck on the island. So I guess no one was looking too closely to wonder, oh, there's a huge pile of leaves there where there wasn't one when we were here just a minute ago. I wonder if the warp pad's underneath that. Probably counting on Stephen not being terribly observant and Lars being angry and frustrated about phone reception. But yeah, we speculated in the last episode about the abuse present in Lars and Sadie's relationship. And I got to say, this time, it's pretty much Sadie doing it, stranding someone in, for all intents and purposes, the middle of nowhere, making them believe they're stuck there and isolating them with you, even if you do have a irritating little half gem boy along for the ride. That's actually pretty terrible. And isolating people like that is another classic abuse tactic. Not quite like that. Magical islands are seldom involved. But despite the fact this trying to show things getting better between, it really just again underscores how unhealthy things are between Sadie and Lars.
100% agree. It's very interesting to see this side of Sadie because up to this point, it really felt like Lars was kind of the ass in this relationship and Sadie was this sort of sweet person who was just falling into that toxic trap of trying to help someone, trying to fix someone. But she's willing to carry on a prolonged deception to try to make this happen. And I don't know, it still is really disappointing to watch kind of the dysfunction going on between the two of them, but it at least feels a little less like there's one victim and one perpetrator.
Yeah, I mean, you could offer up all kinds of particular motives. I mean, I don't think Sadie was trying to exact revenge, but even doing something like this for a motive of this will make us love each other more is pretty horrible stuff.
Yeah, I'm not thinking, wow, Sadie showed us that she's evil or something, but she, like I said, she's willing to lie to him, like keep on pretending that they're stuck there and not reveal like that there's a way home until there was actually immediate physical danger. She was willing to let him continue to be in that high stress situation for days, probably more than a week, and let him suffer like that when he's clearly flipping out about it. He's clearly the most concerned about it. And she knows they're not really stuck there. So, and she's exploiting that to be able to have this time with Lars.
Yeah. So I don't know, at some levels, maybe they're as bad as each other, but doesn't really make it okay either.
Right. Yeah. And I know the whole idea of I want to fix you, like that there's a lot of that with women where they feel like if they find a guy that likes them and they like the guy, that then they'll groom them to be the man they want. And, that he doesn't have the responsibility to be better to her. She has to make him better. And that's, it's not good for either of the people involved, but it's definitely telling to how she thinks about him that she thought of this as helping him.
Yeah, and it was like she was thinking, this will show him what's important in life. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you've just made him a missing person for a couple of weeks. That's actually pretty important too.
Mm-hmm. You have to wonder, because we have not been introduced to either of their parents, assuming that they have parents around who might be worrying about them. And we don't know anything about their managers, but the Big Donut has no employees apparently right now. And, they just disappeared. And it seemed like Sadie kind of was impulsively decided to pull this. And nobody knows where they went. That's scary.
And Lars, at least we know, has friends in the form of the cool kids. So are they not at least a bit worried about where he's been?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if the Gems are worried about Stephen. We never see them again in the episode, but...
Yeah, that's a very good question, is at what point do they worry about Stephen if they don't run into him in the house?
Yeah, and, well, don't know how often Greg and Stephen meet, but surely this must be a bit of a gap for them.
Yeah.
And he's pretty laid back, but there's laid back, and my son has completely disappeared for, weeks or whatever.
Yeah, it does seem like he communicates with enough people relatively regularly that at some point people would start to say, have you seen Stephen? No, have you seen him? What's going on? Where's Stephen? And then people would be worried about where is Stephen, and also that the Big Donut's 2 employees have not been showing up. What's happening? Somebody would notice, but we don't ever get to see once they get back. That's where it ends. So we don't know what the reaction was in their absence.
I don't know if this is just me not knowing how warp pads work, but I don't know if you can't warp in if something's covering it, because it's like, if it's like the Stargate, if it's blocked, it can't materialize stuff properly.
I believe we have seen the answer to that, because in Indirect Kiss, the warp pad was covered in brambles before they appeared.
Oh, no, that's right. Yep.
And they exploded off of it. So I think that's not a problem.
Okay. But again, Sadie doesn't know that.
That's right. Yeah. Don't know how far away the island is. So don't know if they could just get in their gem sloop. Speaking of which, in that episode where they had the gem sloop, they talked about going off to fight a living island. I was hoping this would be the living island, and it didn't seem to be the living island. So we still don't know what that is.
It's an island of something living on it. Or it was.
Yeah, that was cat fingers, right? Yeah, it was cat fingers when they had the gem sloop.
Yeah, because Stephen couldn't swim after them because of his cat fingers.
Yep. They came back to him making all his cat puns sitting on the dock. So we haven't seen their boat since then.
No, and this is also assuming they would guess that he's gone back to where they just were.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do know there's any number of destinations on the Wattpad network, and that's even assuming they assume he's gone that way.
Right. And presumably, if Stephen can make it go to the island and back to the beach house, he would be able to go anywhere that he knows about a warp pad.
Yeah, and there's no control panel to sort of call up last number dialed or anything like that.
Not that we know of, certainly. Yeah, you had mentioned that he's used the pads before, but they were using the warp whistle was activating it. So this is new power for him, technically. I mean, obviously he's been in the warp pad a bunch of times, but this was his first time controlling it. So he has another new power. Woo! And like with the lion and like with the shape-shifting, his first thought is, let me go show everybody.
Yeah.
I'm the warp master. So funny. It's cute. I really like that he still comes across as the way a kid would with a new toy. It's like, I'm going to show everybody my cool new thing. He bursts in, I'm the warp master, Sadie says. That's nice, Stephen.
Yeah, you kind of left divided as to Does she not know what this means, or has she just heard so many magic tales from Stephen that this is just one more?
Yeah. She's probably thinking that she's in line to clean up another Stephen.
Yes.
And Lars is busy sleeping, so she tried to climb over him and then fell down, and he yelled at her for interrupting his nap.
Yeah, and she warned him he could get fired, but I'm beginning to wonder if it's even possible for them to get fired by this point.
Yeah. Are there video cameras on them or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe they're the only two people in Beach City willing to work in the donut shop, so they just can't fire them or they'll lose people altogether.
Oh, you'd certainly never see anybody else behind that counter, except for Stephen that one time.
Yeah. I will say for the artists, though, that was a beautiful island they created. There were several times I thought, oh, this would make a good wallpaper or whatever.
Yeah. I think one of my friends has the island as a desktop wallpaper. I'm trying to remember if I saw that or if it was just so many of the scenery images are so nice and memorable.
Yes, big kudos to the artist this time for those backgrounds and general design.
Yeah. Kind of looks like big geodes everywhere.
Yeah, it's obviously a very gem-happy place, and there are enough bits of gems and things to make necklaces and what have you.
Mm-hmm. And those fish were weird.
Yeah. Apparently everything that native to the island has that weird little face.
Very odd. You mentioned Sadie getting a big scratch on her face. She got roughed up a lot. She got her arm all messed up. It got dirty.
Yeah, and in a nice little animation touch, her leg hair started to grow.
Yep, that is true. So I guess typically Sadie prefers to shave her legs. And in this case, she doesn't have a razor sitting around.
Also, it's probably showing that despite the origins of this, that she's so comfortable being here. That she seems to sort of relax into herself a bit when she's all roughed up and living off the land or living off the ocean. Yeah,
she kind of eased into her element there. I mean, after she was uncertain at first, she became a good fish murderer. Looked like a right hunter there. And they were kind of trading their clothes. I noticed that they were.
Yeah, I noticed that. And we saw Lars in just his second layer shirt or whatever, while she took the snake shirt. And Stephen got a leaf skirt.
Yes. Walking around, living free. He had some dirty teeth in that one montage. It's gross. Ooh.
Yeah, their various innovations on the island didn't include much in the way of hygiene, I think. They got pretty dirty.
Indeed. And then they had to kiss with those mouths.
Yeah.
Now, that was kind of intense for this show so far, at least. It definitely surprised me. I mean, it seemed like they were sort of touching hands, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a kiss.
Yeah, well, which, Stephen kills the mood of right away, which...
He does not get privacy.
Yeah. Mind you, I've done that to people before too, so...
Yeah, I liked leading up to that where we kind of saw this sort of softer side of Lars where he's admitting that he's losing it. He's feeling like he can confide in Sadie that sometimes he feels lonely even when he's around people, and he's crying in front of her. And she seems to understand, and that's when he kisses her, and you can see she was really surprised at first and then relaxed into it. She really wanted that.
Yeah, she's found her way through to his softer side. Mm-hmm. She's known always has been in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though the terms were definitely questionable, I did get into seeing them a little bit. Just I felt like, oh, that's really sweet that they connected, however temporarily, even though she was deceiving him that they were stuck there.
Yeah, so not sure how things might have proceeded were it not for the gem creature and the revelation, but no matter what happened, it was kind of destined to be capped off by the discovery of the warp pad. If she was just, I don't know, hoping A, to stay there forever, or B, that he'd fall so in love with her that he would no longer mind that she trapped them there.
Right. Yeah, maybe she just figured they'd have a connection eventually, and then they could go back home and she'd get to take that with her. No, there's a thing about like if you have a connection with someone in a traumatic atmosphere or, you know, in an unusual situation, even something like summer camp, and it's very sort of isolated and magical, where you have this reality that is very short. And then when it ends, the circumstances that made that so attractive also make it not sustainable in reality. Not always, but sometimes.
Well, it's a fantasy I've heard before that what if I got stuck on a desert island with my crush or secret love or whatever?
Yeah. Just make it a weird gem island. It's not a desert, but full of masked fish.
Yeah, it's Stephen's presence is a weird complication either way, because Sadie probably kind of wants this thing to be open-ended. But if Stephen had left him there and said, right, I'll come back and pick you up in like 5 days or whatever, you wouldn't be able to control that. On the other hand, if he stays there, he's there.
Right. And then there's that unknown where they have a dangerous gem creature that we never found.
Which also meant I briefly thought that the warp pad had simply gone invisible too, except it was much more simple than that.
I've noticed that with reactions to this episode, some people immediately think, what, isn't it under that pile? Like they see it. And I'm like, what? Some people get it right away. Like that Sadie planting that idea that, well, what, it wouldn't disappear, would it? Like that she was behind it and she didn't seem distressed about it. And I don't know, when I saw this, I didn't think she did anything. I didn't know what was going on either.
Yeah, well, my very first thought was they'd simply got lost already and gone back to the wrong clearing.
Right. Or like something's weird about the island.
That's got some kind of throws off your direction thing or changes itself.
Right. And Stephen is the between the three of them, obviously he's the expert on gem stuff. But I mean, if Pearl was there, she'd be like, no, they don't disappear. It's under something. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. Whereas Stephen's like, it wouldn't disappear. No. Well, maybe. He doesn't know. He doesn't know how the world works.
Yeah, and Stephen being Stephen doesn't think, I'll just investigate a bit closer and see if there's anything in that clearing we were at a minute ago which could explain this.
Right.
Oh, I've stubbed my toe on the warp pad underneath a big pile of leaves, which was not here previously.
Right. And how long does it take to cover a warp pad of that size in leaves that happen to be lying around without someone noticing that you've been gone a while?
And good job there's not much wind on the island.
Yeah. Until that rain got there wasn't much weather.
Yeah. What if that's a mood thing for the island, that the rain didn't start until the peril did?
Very interesting. I don't think this is true, but there's a vague resemblance between the invisible gem's gem shape and Lapis's gem shape. And I was thinking, I wonder if that's also a lapis and that's why there's water. But that was just a weird oddball theory I had that I don't think it's accurate now, just because I don't think the shape is quite the same.
No. Yeah, I don't know how many of Lapis's family are out there, but obviously this one is, well, this one's corrupted anyway, even more than our Lapis was. So.
And it was invisible, and that was just something we'd never seen before. Weird.
Yeah, but not unthinkable given that gems like to mess around with light and what have you. So that some kind of gem trait is the ability to bounce light around yourself or something would not be completely out of the realm of what we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. And it got mud on it. You could kind of see what shape it was.
Yeah, it was a kind of brute thing.
Yeah. That was cool, like you said, when you could see what Sadie was doing with that spear thing. She was really shoving it into the body. Woo, she's kind of a badass.
Yeah. Yeah, what's the phrase? Pint-sized powerhouse.
Yeah. I guess it's a nice little reversal where in a lot of adventure kind of shows, the man will protect the woman, but in this one we've got the short, squat lady being the badass.
Well, she was the hunter-gatherer, and Lars was preparing the food.
He was the cook.
And Stephen
nice
was
that he was good at that.
Stephen was the guy with a string on his toe.
Yeah, and a ukulele. And when it came down to it, he was able to put a bubble around them to protect them briefly.
Yeah. Not quite so impenetrable as last time, but it's an evolving power. Well, as the first time, I should say.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an evolving power.
Time.
It's not going to do the same thing always. Not yet.
Yeah. So that's cool that we've finally seen somebody other than a gem destroy a gem monster. So go Sadie.
Yeah. And Stephen was pretty much literally on cleanup.
Yeah. Oh, I got this. And he puts a bubble around it. He's excited that the gems will be so impressed that they captured a gem all by themselves.
I'm kind of sorry we didn't see that.
Yeah, would have been interesting. And then he would have been like, didn't you wonder where I was? And they'd all just kind of look at each other and go, welp.
Sometimes you do spend a long time playing video games.
Yeah. So I liked Lars's joke about fire being nature's microwave.
I like that. It was very limited modern thinking, even though he was probably just making a joke.
Yeah. He did kind of play along a few times. I thought that was interesting that he, for the most part, was resisting having fun, but you could see him kind of getting into it a few times.
Yeah, and his heart melted and joined the other two in the hut. Yeah,
that was cute, and it was sort of I liked in the montage when Lars was kicking Stephen away from them when they were trying to spoon, and it had the vibes like they're a couple, and that's like their annoying kid, or their pet. Get off me.
We can go out, your friend, but you have to take your kid brother with you.
Oof. Yeah. Well, one thing I appreciated about the intensity of their connection or their kiss when it actually happened was, I mean, you said when we were first talking about the show and what you knew about it, that you knew there was in some capacity, there was some queer content in the show. But what we've seen so far in terms of romantic connections seems to all be straight stuff. And I was hoping that maybe they had such an intense first kiss on the show between a guy and a girl. I was hoping that maybe this was establishing we're allowed to have, if this gets through, we're allowed to have this level of intimacy on this show.
Allowed to kiss on this show.
So if we start doing the gay version later, you can't say, well, that's too adult. It's like, well, why is it okay for the heteros to kiss?
Clever.
That's a headcanon of mine that I haven't read that anywhere or anything. I just was hoping that was why early they throw in, episode 30, they throw in a pretty intense straight kiss.
Yeah, well, also sits down, you're allowed to kiss on this show, and you're not allowed to on some kids' shows.
That's right. We had the episode An Indirect Kiss, but Connie never got there. She was too busy drinking his backwash.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me. I know there are places where you aren't allowed to show kissing in films, but they do a lot of workarounds, so they show kissing without actually showing kissing, and that also reminded me a bit of that thinking back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In this one, there was no subtlety to it. It was nice, actually, just because Lars had just been crying and both of their faces were messy. Lars had snot on his face. It was not a pretty kiss.
Very raw emotionally and physically. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're locking lips and they pull back and let them have it for a second. And there's like their arms are going around each other and Sadie's like stroking his back. And then, Stephen, why don't you let yourself just be? Stephen! People walk in and out of my room all the time.
We were about to find out if Lars could take off her bra one-handed.
Assuming she's wearing one at this point.
Well, yeah. Realistically, she might well have ditched that, but I don't know.
Maybe by day 3 on the island.
I just have a bizarre sense of humor about the one-handed bra thing. Don't ask me why.
Maybe if we had gone another week or so, we would have seen more clothing shifting around and Lars would be wearing it as a hat. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point.
Well, the cat here, she heard about bras and she wants to steal them again.
What?
The cat walked in as we were saying that, and my cat has a history of stealing bras.
I see. All right, cat. We know what you like.
But yeah, I mean, you could kind of read in Sadie's face and voice. I don't know how far this would have gone if someone hadn't turned up with their freaking ukulele.
It was a nice piece of mood music when it was appropriate, but at this point, I'm sure it was not welcome to have a reprise.
Well, it probably would have been nice on the soundtrack, but not actually have someone playing it right next to you.
Yeah. Yep.
And Stephen's ideas of how romance work are a bit all over the place. So
it's true. Oh.
Given he sometimes thinks these two are married, so
yeah, he clearly ships them.
Yeah, not sure that's the best idea, but he obviously does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think ever since he suggested to Connie and Bubble Buddies that they're crazy about each other while they're arguing with each other, I think he's just got it in his head. Like, they spend all day at work together. They hang out. They work together. Of course, they're in love. That's how it works. So we didn't really talk about the tiny part of the episode that the gems were in.
Oh, yes. So with the initial incomplete mission and warp padding and Amethyst having seen the fly.
Yes, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
I love Garnet's reaction to it. It was a little funny.
Yeah, I loved that.
So cute. Just, she has so few lines, and then there it is. It was a little funny. Just validation. She decides what's funny and what isn't.
It also makes me wonder how many of the target audience have seen The Fly.
Right. Now, I won't actually watch that movie. That makes me sick. That's like the exact kind of body horror that I will not watch. But obviously, I know what it is. And I think we had it on VHS when I was a kid. And I did see parts of it, which is why I hope I never see any more. Than look, it's horrifying.
That's a fair call.
It's one of those things where the transformation into the fly is slow, right? That he's slowly becoming more of a fly.
Yeah, well, there are two versions out there. The 1980s one, yeah, he's gradually becoming fly-like in a pretty disgusting way.
Yeah. Ugh.
The 1950s one is a bit more, bang, he's got a fly head.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, the gradual, inexorable march toward becoming something inhuman is probably one of the most horrifying horror concepts that I encounter in fiction and never want to voluntarily invite into my life.
Yeah, and this is one of the most explicit renditions thereof, so I'm not going to dissuade you on that one.
Yeah. But I still thought it was funny that the Amethyst invoked it.
Oh, yeah. You know, you can appreciate a reference even if you're not a fan of what it's referring to.
Yeah. It was funny. She was trying to make him think that he scrambled her or something in his... She's mean sometimes. She's really just...
Yeah.
Goes too far. Oh, the Amethyst. She had to get in something in her limited time on screen.
I wonder if she really did get jumbled up, if she could just shapeshift back anyway.
No, I would lean toward no because of what happened to her in Indirect Kiss, that she couldn't make her form go back when there was something fundamentally messed up about her.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know how she would get scrambled if it wasn't physical to her gemstone.
Yeah, though it does seem that the warp pad teleports you by sort of shoving you into subspace and out again rather than disassembling and reassembling you.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not like a Star Trek type of beaming. They seem to be going very fast through some kind of space.
Yeah, we've briefly seen it a couple of times with the various streams and things you shouldn't stick your head out of.
Yes. Oh, let's see, that was in Serious Steven, right?
Yeah, because that's why he...
No, he was coming out at the wrong place. That's right. That was earlier. They went to the cheeseburger backpack one, where his head is flying out the side.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah. In Serious Steven, he is messing about and ends up materializing a couple meters off the ground.
Yep, falls into the strawberries with his ukulele. In this one, it looked like he wasn't carrying his ukulele when they warped back, so I hope he didn't leave it on the island or that he went back for it.
Yeah. Or if he gets home, opens his cupboard, and it's like a row of 9 identical ukuleles.
One each to go with his shirts.
Yep.
You know what? There was a pet peeve I have on this one where Lars got mad that his phone wouldn't connect and he threw it. I always hate that in shows when people can't make a call or whatever and they throw their phone. It just makes me so sad.
Yeah, and also as we increasingly progress, and given that so far as we can tell, these destinations are all on Earth, it's like, why can't he at least get an emergency signal anymore?
Yeah.
But Magical Island, what you going to do?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know where it is, so I guess maybe it's not close enough to a cell tower, and or they don't have the kind of robust cell tower network that we do today.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's, for me, it's not a nit to pick. It's just we're getting to that kind of time where this is going to be a defeated trope. And even in this one, you're going to say, well, they're on a magical island. Cell phones don't work there for some reason. I
liked the setup of that, actually. The way the dialogue flowed was really natural, where Lars is like, we live on a beach. And Steven's like, it's a magical beach. Is that why my phone has no reception? That is funny, though. Steven's like, let's go to the beach. You live in Beach City, dork.
The phone also gave us some kind of sad moments of this is Lars trying to literally and figuratively sort of connect with his normal life.
I liked his comment about how if he's going to be bored out of his mind or possibly die, he's going to go to work and get paid. You think you're going to possibly die at work? Well, I mean, with the gems around, you never know what kind of weird enemies are going to fly through the walls.
A giant rock space eye could land on you.
Or your mouth could be on fire.
Yeah. Or Amethyst could eat your entire stock.
Oh, well, that's undoubtedly happened at least a couple of times. That along with whipping the dumpster in half.
Oh, yeah. I guess the food this week was the smiley fish.
You would be right. I have done 2 island adventure related recipes. The first one that I did, I was like, well, I don't eat fish because I'm vegetarian. So, I mean, if I was stuck on that island, maybe I would eat fish, but I'm not. So I used some vegetarian fish cutlet type things, which did not look at all like those smiling fish, but I figured, okay, this is close enough. And kind of put it on little sticks like they had at little kebabs, fruits, like some tomatoes and stuff that looked reasonably like what they were eating. And I actually put a fire in my fireplace and cooked them.
Oh, nice.
And of course, if you do not have access to nature's microwave, you can use a real microwave. But I also made a candy version of that with like gummy Swedish fish and gumballs and stuff. Just thought it was cute. I did it at the same time.
It's
and much more recently, I decided the big fish that they cooked on a spit deserved to be done. And I made a fish cake using pancake batter. So it was kind of a like pancake mix there was a lot of eggs and milk and stuff in it. So it was kind of a squishier cake so that it would take the form of my fish shaped cake pan much better. And I actually put it on a stick and tried to make it look like the fish. Now, for things like this, I usually try to make things as close to the actual thing as I can. But in this case, I was too attracted to wanting to make the actual shape of the fish and try to prop it up and make it look like that. Now, with the fish on kebabs, if you get disturbed by the way that they're smiling at you, you can always cover it with a bay leaf.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to use a bay leaf or something to cover where the face would be.
I did have one screenshot that has that.
Well, and when I was watching it, I was thinking, because I know some vegetarians use the phrase, I don't eat anything with a face. And it's like, well, that thing's pretty laying it on thick, isn't it?
I didn't try to duplicate the way that the faces looked. I didn't go that far.
It would take some doing.
Yeah.
Or you'd just be scared out halfway through.
Yeah. And when I was making the kebab thing, I didn't make it look exactly like the images because I don't know what those fruits were. So I just kind of figured, okay, this is like in the spirit of what they're doing. They harvested whatever was around. So I also harvested whatever was around. Just put, what did I use? I know I used like little cherry tomatoes on it, but I think I might have put dried dates or something on there. I think I did. So it ended up looking really cute and I knew what it was. So that's all that matters. Should we talk about the music or should we talk about a probing question?
Let's music first because we've already visited that a bit.
Yeah. Well, we know what the music was. The song is Be Wherever You Are.
Which has a nice message of trying to be happy in the situation you find yourself.
That's right, yeah.
Need not be literally where you are.
Mm-hmm. I like that is ostensibly being played by Steven on the ukulele while he's there. He has his ukulele, unlike with Giant Woman, where it's ukulele music and he's singing, but he doesn't have the ukulele in that episode. It's kind of interesting.
Also, it happens a lot of musical things that he kind of starts singing for real and then it sort of shifts into music over.
That's right.
A montage. So just kind of roll with it. He's probably sang it once, unless he just sang a little bit every time one of those things on screen happened.
Right. Yeah. And clearly he's still singing it to serenade them while they're trying to kiss. So it seemed like they were enjoying his little concert when that happened the first night when they were cooking.
Yeah, I think they enjoyed sort of the slight mood lift and as they thought they were making the best of a bad lot. Lars thought they were making the best of a bad lot.
Right. And Steven, his performance in this was very good. The way that Zach Callison sang it just sounded very even, just a very solid performance. And I liked the song a lot. Mm. And the ukulele music happens to go very well with the island sound in this case.
Sound and pictures came together very well this week.
Yeah. And I enjoy playing that song. It's a relatively easy one.
Yeah, I could see you miming out the corner of my eye while I was watching and that song was playing.
Right at the end. I'm like, I'm doing the chords. Yeah, those are the chords I'm using for our outro right now.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. I don't do the rhythm quite the same, though. I have trouble with rhythm. But whatever. I can just say that it's my version and pretend that I'm being creative instead of dysfunctional.
You're interpreting it.
That's right. You're
giving it the Ivy spin.
That's right. I can't not is the trouble. It's one of the earlier songs that I learned on ukulele. It seemed like the chords are relatively easy to shift between and fun to play. I think, let's see, Rebecca Sugar said that she wrote this when she was kind of trying to be okay with just being where she was and having trouble relaxing while she was on a vacation. If I'm not mistaken, I think she was working on this song and stuff coming up later in the season, like right now, when the show was actually premiering, and she was worrying about what people were going to think of it and what were people saying about her show and having a lot of anxiety about it. So it was really hard to be present in a vacation that was supposed to be about getting away. So she wrote that to kind of help her be centered.
I can see it working for her that way.
It's not one of those songs that's so context dependent, because you could take it out of this show and have a good song, whereas the song Giant Woman, you'd just be like, all right, what that one's very dependent on context.
This one is very general, which means it makes its message work all the better.
Right. Well, a few songs that are just so far seem like they would be good sort of singles being separated from the context of the show. Like, Let Me Drive My Van Into Your Heart is not necessarily something you need to understand what's going on in this one. Whereas I feel like, the Cookie Cat rap is very specific, and the Strong in the Real Way song has specific references to what they're doing.
Yeah, that one's an odd little mix of both, because its central theme is fairly broad, but some of the stuff in the song is pointing pretty hard to events in the show.
Right, where Pearl is singing about Sugilite. It's like, why do you have to look up to her? Aside from in a literal sense. So let's see. Do we have anything else to say about the song?
I think we've covered the song. It's a nice song, and yeah, it's one of the more broad situations, one of the more plot agnostic performances.
Yes. That's a good way of saying it. I don't recall what other instrumentals there are. I believe there's some cool music when Sadie is fighting, but I don't remember what it's called. So
they generally do good with their action fighting themes.
Yeah. Some good mood music.
Follow-up questions!
I might have a doozy of a probing question here.
Oh my.
I had heard that this was one of the episodes that helped to fuel people saying that they had a headcanon that Lars might be a trans man.
Oh.
And a lot of people are saying, what? Why? And then other people are saying, oh, because this and because this episode and that episode. And so just before I tell you all the stuff that I've heard, what are your first thoughts on that?
Well, I, at least being a trans viewer myself, didn't go, that clinches it. He's a trans dude. So there's nothing that leapt out at me.
Mm-hmm.
I could see, especially from a conversation I had with a trans chap just yesterday, that his lack of growing any additional hair over the weeks would be a suggester.
That's the big one about this episode, especially with the focus on Sadie having leg hair.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's certainly possible, but also some cis dudes also just don't grow a lot of hair. So
Right.
I wouldn't call it a clincher based on
No,
that.
not at all. Especially since his hair is like mohawky kind of, and nothing grows on the side of his head either. So
Yeah, he may have some kind of cartoon biology about his hair.
Yeah. And he doesn't seem to be a particularly hairy person in general. Like no real body hair is visible.
I have known some trans dudes to become easily angered once they go on testosterone, which is definitely a Lars-ish trait.
Mm-hmm.
Though a lot of people, cis, trans, male, female, any of the others also just happen to get angry easily too. So I can see the interpretations there, but to me, this doesn't nail it per se. But then I guess I'm also fairly broad-minded that a lot of things can apply to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. I think one of the big arguments kind of against it is that Lars is not he's one of the more sort of problematic characters in general. He's kind of a jerk, and there aren't that many jerks in this show. So it would be a strange writing choice to say we're going to take the person who's kind of a jerk and make him a misunderstood minority. You know?
Certainly on the meta level, that works against it. I was mostly thinking of just in story, but
yes, yeah, exactly. Like
on a meta thing, that would certainly be unfortunate implications with capital U, capital I.
Right. I think one of the main reasons that people have argued for it is also sort of more meta, is that he's one of the only people that we see enforcing gender roles at all. Like saying, if I wasn't so modest, I'd show you what a real man looks like, or calling Stephen a wuss or whatever. And I have seen, like, occasionally, especially when people are first getting into kind of early transition and stuff, sometimes people are really adamant about reinforcing those roles on themselves and other people. But I mean, it's also a thing that insecure cis dudes do all the time. So, I mean, it seems like, you know, the main reason, though, that I've never made any vocal arguments against something like that is that the main people I see talking about saying that they headcanon that is true is non-binary people and trans people. They're saying, I see myself in this character, or I relate to him for this reason or whatever. And, you know, obviously I'm not going to say, well, I think that's a problem. So, I mean, it's kind of not my fight. But, you know, the first time I heard that, I was a little bit taken aback because I didn't see it.
I can see how they get there, and certainly nothing so far has made me go, well, he's definitely not a trans dude.
Right.
But I don't think I'd assume he was, not what we've seen so far anyway.
Right.
There's a lot of, that could mean this, and I certainly appreciate your headcanon and aren't going to deny it.
Right. Yeah.
but it's not a lock for me. And I know some people, I know also just headcanons in general, some people get very determined that their headcanon is actually solid lock gospel true.
I mean, exactly, with, headcanons. It's always a little dicey. I think also...
On that note, the protagonist of the Legends of Zelda games, there's a huge amount of Link's a trans woman headcanon out there.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some of those.
And I, not being terribly familiar with the games at all, asked someone who was pushing this. I said, is there a thing that say that in the game? Genuinely asking if this is a thing from the game. And they said, it doesn't have to say it in the game, and you're raising trans people by asking. Ouch.
If I want some justification for this, that means I'm erasing an entire population. You're like, I resemble that remark.
Yeah, and also it's like, I was expecting something like, there's a reference in the third game where this and this happens.
Yeah. I mean, is anything, like, if you ask, is this supported by the canon? You're not saying you have to prove this to me with canon sources or else you're wrong. Like, that's not what that says.
Yeah, I didn't even know we were talking about headcanon. I just thought this was an aspect of the game I was not aware of.
Right, if you are not a player of it.
I've later learned that apparently a lot of that is because Link has long, pretty hair, therefore he's a girl. And It's like, that's actually a little bit just as bad, that kind of jump.
Right, the sort of gender essentialism and gender performance kind of stuff. I think one of the things I heard somebody use as a signal or a sign or something that they related to was that Lars seemed to be, when the cool kids and him were trying to go in that moss-infested lake, that he kind of took a deep breath to kind of steel himself before he took his shirt off, like he was worried about what people would think of him. But then that's also something lots and lots of people do for any reason. And he's insecure in general, which also kind of made me think, well, if they're implying that maybe he recently had top surgery or something like that, I'm wondering, what part of his transition do they believe that he's in? If they think that that's what he's going through, I don't know. And we also don't know how old he is. So,
yeah, he's some kind of nebulous age from 15 to 30.
Right. He does seem to be, young enough to care about what the cool kids think. But I don't know. So it's an interesting thing. Like, I went to a Steven Universe related party with some friends once where it was supposed to be new episodes that we were going to see together. So I went to this friend's house, but by the time that the party happened, the episodes had all already leaked. So we had seen them. So it wasn't a premiere. So it was just a party. It was a group of people that I met through my queer brunch, and about half the people there were trans. And one of them was talking about this Lars headcanon a lot, like referring to Lars as being, being his, like, I guess, his favorite character in the show because of connecting to him over this. And I remember I was with my friend who was not part of the queer brunch, but he drove me there. And he's kind of one of those straight cis ally people that he doesn't spend really any time in our communities, but he knows what to say and what not to say, and knows how to shut up if he doesn't know if he shouldn't say something. So, he's a good egg. But I saw him kind of like make this sort of frowny face, like he didn't know what that was about, because I guess he didn't know that anyone headcanoned Lars as trans. And I was like, oh, I'm going to have to explain this to him later, because lots of people in the community think that he is a trans guy. That was interesting. Well, let's see. Anything else on that, or should I show you merchandise?
Merchandise, please.
Brand spanking new, mint in box.
I'm going to show you, this is an interesting type of merchandise. So I have a set of stickers. Here's the first one.
Oh, there we are.
A pretty large set of stickers.
A lot of stickers, yeah.
These come as extra stickers in the, let's see, what are they called? They're dog tags. Steven Universe dog tags all come with a bonus sticker. And I'm using these as my merchandise today because this is literally the only official merchandise that has anything that has Sadie on it.
Oh.
Let's see if I can find the one with Sadie.
The merchandise makers don't rate you, Sadie.
I know. Here we go. There's a Sadie. Sadie's sticker.
Yeah. Oh, she's in her, I like her jacket.
In her little jacket. Yeah, she wore it to the island and took it off almost immediately with Steven. But I couldn't figure out why. Like, why is this the only thing that has Sadie? It's so weird. We have a pearl and, there's a lot of just, generic. Here's Amethyst laughing.
Yeah.
Generic little poses. There's a cookie cat and a pearl. But they're all just standard art. And none of them are spoilery for you, so I can show you.
Yay.
And there's a little cute pearl pose.
Well, that actually ties into something I keep meaning to bring up, but because it's at the start of the episode and we start talking at the end, it keeps dropping out. Oh, Lion's adorable. Just the subtlety by which all of the main gems sort of characters are shown off by the way they sit down in the title sequence.
Mm-hmm.
That Amethyst sort of just hits the ground, Garnet sits down, I don't know, functionally, if you will, and Pearl properly lays herself down like she's just been reading How to Compose Yourself a Ladies Manual.
It's true. Garnet is kind of like already lying down on this lawn chair and just kind of bouncing her knee. It's cute.
I understand this is how you sit on a lawn chair.
Yeah. Look at me in all my glory. I'm relaxing. Deal with it.
Draw me like one of your French gems.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So in fact, that's the thing about Garnet in that you don't actually see her sit. You just join her like that. She's already where she needs to be.
Mm-hmm. And Amethyst is tossing her hair around, right?
Yeah.
She does this weird hair toss.
Yeah, and she's sort of like slapping herself around, whatever. You get at least some idea of what this person is. Oh, hey Greg, it's like a Walkman or an iPod or something.
Yeah, it's probably a tape cassette.
Yeah.
It's Greg is Greg. Most of them are
probably
just
like sold media.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one of these is the gems together with popcorn. Let's see, can I get that close enough?
That's a nice one.
Yeah, that reminds me of the pose from Stephen the Sword Fighter, but Pearl is not. Pearl is already wearing her outfit from after she got killed in that episode. So
they look like it's movie night in that sticker you just showed me.
Yeah, that's cute. But I like anything that has Stephen like laying on Garnet's hair with all of his weight, just on top of her big square head. Is so cute.
I love that she doesn't seem to notice or anything. Like, it's not like she has to tense her shoulders or her neck buckles or anything. She's just able to still stay sitting straight up, even with this boy leaning on her head.
Yes. You'd expect nothing less of Garnet. It'd be funny if one day he just tries to throw himself at her hair and he just sinks into it. Like quicksand.
Like the guy from the Super Globetrotters. He used to keep stuff in his hair. That was like his magic storage point.
Okay. Oh, the sticker that happens to have Sadie on it was my merch. And I told you about my fish sticks. We talked about music. We talked about probing questions. We talked about this episode.
Yeah, I think we talked it through.
I think this might be a wrap. We're finished with our adventure.
Yeah, we had our adventure of the island adventure.
Yes.
If only I had known that.
Actually, I didn't do my factoids yet, so we're not out of stuff yet.
Oh, right.
I didn't tell you who boarded it or what they describe it. It's Raven, Mollisy, and Paul Faleco again. I didn't think there were any Paul faces, but by definition, there were some. But the tagline says, Stephen takes Lars and Sadie on a vacation to a magical beach to mend their friendship.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I almost said this earlier, but I held off for the factoid section, and I can't believe I almost forgot to say it, but this actually is censored in a lot of foreign countries because of all the intimacy and kissing.
The kissing.
Yeah. They also previewed it one year at New York Comic Con. So this was like a little clip was shown there. But I didn't know about it because I was not into the show yet when that was a reveal. So I think a lot of people don't know that was a cute little preview they did. This is also... Huh?
doesn't surprise you about the kissing being cut, because I remember when you just couldn't do that sort of thing on kids' TV either way. So that not every broadcaster is caught up with that doesn't entirely surprise me.
Yeah. I don't know which countries, though. I didn't look it up, but I heard that there were some countries that just said, oh, well, the age group that we show this to, we don't show kissing. We don't show anything like that.
Yeah, and
no, we can show them fighting, but we can't show them kissing. Actually, I think maybe some of the violence might have been censored too, now that I think about it.
Well, I was a little surprised also at the explicit mention of murder, even if it is of a fish.
Yeah, fish murdering skills.
Well, also, kids' TV likes to disconnect animal product as food from animal as actual animal, especially the you have to kill them bit in the middle.
Yes.
So not only keeping that, but describing it as actual murder, that surprised me a bit too. So this one has kissing and violence in it.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids shouldn't be watching.
At one point, there was the really big fish that leaped out of the ocean to try to get Sadie, and she got it first. Well, she got it second. They had it for lunch, for dinner. Yeah, that was pretty violent. And, Stephen reacting to the fish by saying, "It keeps looking at me." So he definitely strikes me as the kind of kid that would go through a phase of saying that he didn't want to eat animals because they were his friends.
Yeah, I was mildly surprised he understood that animals were food, but
yeah, I think at this point he likes his hot dogs that are, made from imperfect pork chops.
He doesn't think pork chops just occur naturally in the wild.
There's a pork chop tree. So a little factoid for you is that the island has a name. It's called Mask Island.
A mask like a thing on your face?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After all the trans last talk, my brain went to Mask of the Sea.
So now I'm done with factoids.
I wonder if it's cut on the streaming here.
Hmm?
I wonder if it was cut here on the streaming.
Oh. I don't know.
So often the streaming services are law unto themselves for that sort of thing. They don't get the same broadcast cuts.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't entirely know why, but sometimes they get them straight from the source rather than TV companies, which may just ship them around to each other.
Mm-hmm. I know there's some pretty significant edits that are from some later episodes in the next season that they pulled some content when they showed it in the UK. So, but I don't know about Australia.
Yeah, the UK makes interesting decisions sometimes.
Interesting decisions. You can say that again.
Well, they used to cut a lot of Star Trek and Babylon 5 because they insisted on showing it at 5 and 6 p.m. And there was all sorts of stuff that's not suitable for what they call tea time viewing. But the problem was never meant to be for that. It was meant to be done at like 8 or 9 in the evening.
So they changed what was actually in the content of the show because of when they perceived it should be shown.
Yeah, and infamous for what they did to Buffy the Vampire Slayer because they were convinced for ages it should be a younger viewers show.
Oh, wow. I think that remains a problem in some places for Steven Universe because in the United States, it's not for the youngest group of kids. It's not like G-rated. And there's definitely some pretty disturbing stuff, even early on, as we've discussed with Primo and Catfingers. But in some countries, I think they lump the kids' programming all the way down to preschoolers, and anything that they don't want to show them, like mutated cats growing all over someone, then they will heavily censor it. So,
yeah, and there's a lot of things which make sense to the people who cut them, but not the people viewing. So
yeah, and then of course they try to explain it to anybody who asks out from outside, and they're like, well, this is what makes sense locally. This will please our local tastes. And we're like, well, is your local taste homophobia?
Yeah, bit of that.
Sometimes the answer is yes. But I guess we'll have to save some of those discussions for if we ever get anything for homophobia to react to in this show, because so far there's not much.
No.
We just had straight people kissing.
Pearl's carrying the load by just obviously having such thing for Rose.
Yeah, daydreaming about her lacrimal essence. Wow.
You romantic.
So far you feel that Pearl has won for gayest gem.
Yeah, well, at the moment
she has a lot of competition at this point.
Well, she has a target for it, a subject, if you will, an object of her affections.
Be an interesting conversation, considering that's Stephen's mom.
Yeah, so
that, he now has her gem. So that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and and with gems otherwise sort of being their gems.
Yeah.
This isn't just like a you got your mother's eyes situation.
Oh goodness.
This is a you've got your mother's eyes situation.
And they're in your belly button. Oh God.
I'd just like to say to the listeners that it is the one who can't stand body horror that came up with eyes in the belly button.
I resemble that remark, and I'm not apologizing. So shall we wrap up by me telling you what the title is for 31?
Yeah, what's number 31?
Are you sure you really want to know? Because the title of number 31 is Keep Beach City Weird.
Well, we may be in for some Ronaldo or blogging.
Maybe. Don't worry, I'll make you repeat your predictions when we introduce the next one.
If I can commit that leap of deduction again.
Wow. All right. I guess we should wrap it up before we get extremely silly and weird.
Right. Well, thanks for listening again, everyone.
Thank you. You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube.
Or in audio form at anchor.fm/Not So Giant Women or your podcatcher of choice. You can also find us on Facebook.
Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast.
And Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended.